Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, or how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business through to the end consumer, or how to go about finding an investor if you're ready for that aspect. Bottom line is we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important aspects of this journey to establishing and growing your brand. Tracy and I have been doing this a long time. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we've done a few good things, so we're here to help you. Please follow our podcast on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a review, and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. Tracy?
Bruce and I have been involved in consumer packaged goods commercial operations roles for over 30 years. We define commercial operation functions relating to sales, marketing, trade marketing, broker and distributor management, agency selection and management, new product development, brand acquisition and divestitures, and customer management. We also invite on our episodes friends and former colleagues from all aspects of the Road to Retail process to come on the show and offer their opinions and experience. Again, we encourage you to subscribe to our iTunes or Spotify channel at Road, 2 Retail. So Bruce, before we get to our wonderful guest today, tell us about our episode's sponsor.
Oh, thanks, Tracy. Our sponsor today is Media Manager Marketplace. So you've heard Tracy and I say many times on this program that getting on the shelf isn't the victory. It's getting the product off the shelves and out the door in the consumer shopping cart that's going to make your product take root and grow. The best way to accomplish that is with advertising and marketing. And that's why we're so happy to have Media Manager Marketplace as one of the cornerstone sponsors of the Road to Retail podcast. Media Manager Marketplace specializes in helping brands maximize the reach and impact of their advertising dollars by making sure that your precious marketing budget is spent on the right media mix to match your brand's demographics. And if you think it's going to cost you millions of dollars to create a national TV or radio marketing campaign, then you really need to think again. Media Manager Marketplace can get your campaign started for far less than you might imagine. Their expertise in using the right blend of advertising to help drive demand for your product could be the difference between a 90-day trial and a nationwide rollout of your brand. Buck Robinson, the president of Media Manager Marketplace and an industry veteran of over 30 years, will personally review your product and offer his free assessment. Email him directly today, buck@themediamgr.com. That's Buck, like a dollar bill, and he'll stretch that baby for you at themediamgr.com. Tracy, today we have Larissa Dannenberg with us. Larissa is the VP of Consulting at well, she might work at Media Marketplace Manager one day, but that's up to Buck Robinson and her. No, right now she's working as a VP of Consulting at Market Performance Group. Larissa, welcome to the show, and why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then we'll talk about today's topic, which I think will be really interesting given how present it is for all brands trying to operate in the retail world right now.
Of course. Thank you, Bruce. Tracy, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here today. So my career journey really started out with traditional CPG marketing. Right out of business school, I went to Kimberly-Clark, which was a great place to start and learn the fundamentals of true marketing. There was a way to do things, there's a way not to do things, and that really gave me the foundation. It was interesting because I kind of fell into this career not so much by choice. After business school, I was fortunate enough to meet somebody that was there and had a great kind of connection. And the next thing I knew, I was in Neenah, Wisconsin. And I didn't think I was going to be doing marketing. You know, I kind of wanted to do something what I thought more noble, more save the world. My undergraduate degree was in something totally different, but I found myself in this, top tier Fortune 100 company with these awesome brands. And the first categories that I got put on was adult incontinence. And if you know anything about that category, super emotional. So it's the Depend and Poise brand. And after my first focus group, I was hooked. Like, I realized that brands serve a real purpose for consumers. And in many instances, there's an emotional connection. And that for me was a big awakening. Like, school doesn't teach you that stuff, right? Until you're sitting across the mirror from somebody and hearing them talk about how your brand affects their day-to-day life, you don't really get it. That for me was the light bulb and really started the love for marketing, and specifically in CPG marketing. So I stayed there for a couple of years. Then I moved on to Chicago, where I worked on the Egg Beaters brand for Conagra Foods. And I'm originally from the Northeast. So a couple of years later, I made it back to the Northeast, where I spent the next 15 plus years in the OTC healthcare space. So fortunate in that, still on brands that served a need for people and continue to provide that, emotional connection with things with products that make people's lives better. So did that, kind of crawled up the ranks, if you will, in traditional marketing roles. And then in 2017, I decided to make a shift to digital. So at that point in time, I was working at Pfizer, which then merged with GSK, and I had the opportunity to do e-commerce. And I'm like, I need to get into this space. And that's what started I guess my love affair with e-com and all things that stem from that. So which today we're talking about retail media, but that for me was like the turning point. So I've been in that space for a while. And now I'm at MPG helping clients figure it out.
That's
Well,
awesome.
that's quite a journey. I started largely in the brand management world as well, and it's a great first job. Like you said, teaches you a ton of stuff, teaches you to work across your organization. But I guess selfishly, one thing I really liked is you had your one brand, and it was like, make this work. And I was like, I can remember one
Yep.
thing. So that was really good. So you already kind of let the genie out of the bottle, but let's set up today's episode. So can you define and tell us all a little bit about these emerging retail media networks, RMNs, if we want to keep it a bit snappier,
Yep.
how they came to be? Was it all really just a pursuit of Amazon? So we want to hear from you, because Tracy and I get calls now, like you do every day, from clients saying, hey, CVS wants me to do this. What is it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really taken off in the past few years. They call it like the third big wave of media. And retail media is basically what it sounds like. So it is a network that sells ads, which is owned by a retailer, right? So we think about it, if you pick a retailer of choice, Walmart, Target, CVS, you mentioned, right? Like, those retailers own real estate now on their website, on their mobile app, and they're able to sell that real estate, call it ads, to brands, to promote what they sell. So it's, this world that we live in is littered with acronyms, but that's what that RMN is, right? It's like owned advertising that those retailers are now selling to get the brand message out there.
So which of the retailers, Larissa, have these networks for people that may only have heard of one, or they're really just growing and they might only be in one or two accounts? So what are the big ones? You mentioned Walmart Connect. Who else is out there that you're constantly, thinking about and planning with your clients?
Yeah, the big ones all have it. It's interesting. I think the harder question to answer would be like, who doesn't have it? And the more clients we work with in different categories, we're like, oh, they have a retail media network too. So the big ones, obviously, forget Amazon. We can talk about them for a second, right? But Walmart Connect, Target has Target Roundel. You mentioned CVS Media Exchange, but then the big ones you would expect, Costco, but you've got Dollar General, right? And then you've got different retailers like Macy's and Home Depot and Costco. So one of the new ones that we recently were working with, convenience store, right?
Really?
Wawa, Pilot, Yeah, these regional convenience stores, formerly gas stations, but now, they sell like lunch and delis and stuff like that. They have apps. So if you think about it, someone's driving from point A to point B, they want to stop and like gas up, pick up a sandwich. You have the app, there's their ads being served there for you. So anybody that has a retail space now, combined with a digital platform, has the opportunity to create their own retail media network. And that's what we're seeing. And you had asked like how it's come up. And I think for sure, obviously Amazon was there first and everybody saw the revenue, right? Like it's huge. Today, I think, what is it? Close to like 40 billion, maybe over 40 billion in ad revenue from Amazon. And big number, right?
Yeah.
And retailers want a piece of that action, right? So I think first and foremost, it's like, okay, let's get in on that. There's a little bit of a profit grab there, but there is a lot that retailers that have physical stores can offer that Amazon can't. So it's a matter of like figuring that out and playing into it.
So that's interesting. And before I kick this over to Tracy, how do these retailers view their RMN within their existing business model? Is it becoming a bigger component? Are they all still sort of tinkering with it? I mean, it's been mentioned in the last couple of Walmart earnings reports. So at least as far as Walmart goes, from the traditional retailers, it's having an impact there because they wouldn't talk about it if it was a nit, right?
Right. It is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the retailer's overall P&L, right? It is indeed a profit generator for them. And if you think about retailers and the type of products that they sell, it's a low margin business. So this is really a natural evolution and fits well into their business model. And when we talk to our clients, have a lot of like old school marketers that are like, oh, retail media is a tax. Kind of, but like, and this is the big part, it's like, but there's a lot that you can get out of it, right? So if you think about it, it's just, oh, it's a pay to play, this is what I have to do, you're not going to get the value out of it. But those RMNs can offer a lot of different opportunities for brands based on whatever their objective is, and they can help accomplish that.
Great. Tracy?
Yeah. So Larissa, tell us a little bit about how these RMNs compare to the Amazon advertising platform.
So, Amazon has been around for a really long time. They've been doing it for a long time. So it is arguably the most sophisticated and for sure has the biggest scale, right? So that goes without saying. But the other retail media networks, and we talked about, be it Walmart with Walmart Connect or Target with Target Roundel, what they have is massive physical footprints. They have stores, right? And this is something that we can't be understated. And they can do amazing things that Amazon cannot do. So everybody kind of thinks about, oh yeah, let's go to Amazon. Yeah, tons of eyeballs, like no argument there. But depending on what the product is, what the brand is, the stores can do a lot. Walmart, you mentioned the earnings. They also recently mentioned that they're going to be putting ads at the checkout counter, at the self-checkout lane.
Wow.
At the store, they've got televisions. They can be running ads all day. You've got the radio playing, as you're walking through shopping. So there are countless touch points inside those stores that the RMNs, those retail media networks that are owned by that retailer, can intercept that consumer when they're in the store. So what Amazon doesn't have, that these omni-channel retailers, and by omni-channel basically mean they have a physical store footprint and a .com, they can start to interconnect the physical world and the digital world. And that's really huge.
Yeah, it's gigantic. So do the brands expect the RMNs to perform just like Amazon? Are the metrics the same?
I think it depends. Some do, right? Like I think some of the nascent ones come in like eyes wide and wanting to see the same results that they see on Amazon, that they see on Walmart. And there's a lot of different factors there, right? Like media dollars can buy eyeballs and you can get targeted eyeballs, right? So there's like a lot of similarities in that respect. I mentioned the difference being stores. And what we often advise our clients on or remind, especially emerging or smaller nascent brands to think about is, okay, so they want distribution, right? And so they have a go-to-market strategy and they've identified what store they want to go to and how they're going to, what assortment they're going to bring and who that consumer is. And let's say it's Walmart, right? Because why not? Almost 5,000 stores. They've got almost 200 million people in and out between their app and the store and their website. So you have traffic. But Walmart doesn't just let you go on shelf, right? Like you have to prove yourself first on their .com, on that Walmart marketplace, which is great. And many small brands can do that, right? They tend to be sometimes niche products, find that niche consumer, and through that targeted RMN, those media dollars, they can find those shoppers. Sometimes the problem is that how that product is fulfilled makes a difference, right? So if you get distribution on Amazon, which is super easy to do, right? You go, you add to cart, it shows up on your doorstep. That is not always the case with the omni-channel retailers. Like, let's continue to use that Walmart example. So we know based on the clients that we serve, like 80% of our ad dollars are attributed to in-store pickup.
Wow.
That's a big deal because if I'm selling my brand on Walmart.com and I'm still trying to generate sales to prove my worthiness to eventually make it onto the store shelf, I need to understand how that retailer is fulfilling that order. So I may have bought an ad through retail media through Walmart's Connect, right? And I may have gotten that consumer to see my product, added it to cart along with all the other stuff that they're buying. And then I get to the checkout and the option is ship to home or pickup, in-store pickup. And right now, 80% of Walmart shoppers are doing in-store pickup, which means what is in their cart has to be on the store shelf because somebody in that store is walking those shelves and picking up the product and putting it in the cart. So when you drive up in your car, you can go up and get it or they'll put it in your trunk, right? If you're doing that with a brand that doesn't have distribution and you're trying to measure a sale, you've lost that sale. Like the probability for your conversion drops because it's not on the store shelf for that person to put it in the cart and then your car. So there's just a difference, right? And it's just a matter of understanding how those fulfillment methods work for each one of those retailers and how they fulfill those orders. So, it's fun to talk about like the marketing part and the media part, but then understanding the downstream implication of how it gets fulfilled is huge because you could be spending dollars and then not seeing those orders be fulfilled and you lose a sale.
So that's really interesting. And I think you've already kind of hit on one of the other topics we were going to discuss, but I want to dig in a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So Larissa, can you tell the folks how are the retailers that have an RMN, how are they attempting to, let me use a kind word, influence their suppliers to engage and spend money on those platforms? So that's one question. And then part two would be, could you, go really slowly and explain attribution? Because I've paid a lot of bills around products sold where people tell me it was attributed to an online ad. And I'm like, what? So understanding that would be helpful to at least me, hopefully a couple other people too.
It's a tricky one. And I do like to keep things simple, right? And right now we see retailers leveraging those RMNs and those attribution models to get marketing dollars. And when they say attribution models or the word attribution, right, basically in its simplest form means to identify and give credit to an ad that a consumer engaged with somewhere along that consumer journey, and then ultimately add to cart and bought it, right? So they want to be able to say this ad that you saw on my.com made you buy that product. So in that way, the retailer and the retailer RMNs can come back to the brand and be like, hey, look, the money that you spent with us drove that sale, right? So they're attributing that sale to that media, to the eyeballs that saw that ad. And as a result, that person brought the product.
So a follow-up here, and by all means, correct me if I'm wrong. So brands that I've been involved with recently, applying their marketing and trade marketing dollars, they go into account X that has an RMN, and the account tells the brand that, you need to make a commitment of X dollars to be, brought into distribution. Some of them will say you got to prove it online first, but then that gets to your example. Okay, I'm proving it online, but most people pick up in store and I'm not in the store yet. So that's a car crash.
Yep.
But I've also gotten my invoices from some of these retailers where I've bought the media, and then they say, we're attributing this number of sales to this media program, and then they want a fee on top of that because they're attributing. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I bought the ad space in order to drive sales. So now you're kind of tagging me twice. Is that a correct description of what happens, at least at some? And where I'm getting at, brands need to really think through the expenses, because it might not just be the media outlay. It's also going to be an attribution bill as well.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. And the way you described it, I think is correct in certain instances with certain retailers. But I think the underlying piece is brands need to understand what they're getting into. To your point, what are the fees? Like, what am I paying for? And what am I expected to get in return for that spend? It's a critical component because it's alluring, right? It's alluring to get a lot of eyeballs on your new brand that you're bringing to market, and you've got these big banners behind you, right? So I think sometimes the tendency is to get carried away, and be like, okay, like I'm pushing in all my chips, right? But I think it's two things. One, understanding how those chips are going to get spent, and number two, and this is often other counsel that we give our clients, don't push in all your chips at once, right? You can intend to spend all of those chips, but stagger them a little bit and see what return you're actually getting for that spend before you make the next investment.
So Tracy and I talk a lot, Larissa, especially with smaller brands that have to be a little more careful with their cash just because they don't have as much of it. And that's not to insinuate that big brands are flippant. But do you find that the retailers that have the RMNs are pretty transparent in saying, hey, Bruce, your brand of X, you're going to spend X dollars, and then you'll probably sell about this much given other things in your category. So the attribution expense will be Y? Or is this where a place like MPG and you come in to protect your clients and say, look, it's not just a $40,000 buy. It's going to be $40,000 plus a 5% fee on each unit sold?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, but that is definitely where MPG comes in and helps, because it's a negotiation, right? And I think this is what a lot of brands sometimes forget. Like, bigger brands are used to JBPs, right? Or joint business plans, where they come in and they negotiate with the funds that they have for a particular retailer, be it trade, shopper marketing. And what we're advising to do is bring in those retail media dollars, right? You want to be negotiating with the full amount and be clear, at least internally, what the investment is that you're making, because maybe there is an attribution fee. Fine, right? And maybe that's not negotiable. So be it. But you're also investing all this other money, right? Even if it's a smaller brand, you're still probably investing a little bit over here, a little bit over there, but know the deck that you're dealing with and be bold and ask for what you want, right? I think that's the other thing. It's like sometimes brands forget the gravitas that they have, be it an emerging brand that has a really tight niche following, or one of these behemoths, right? Like, that to me has been an interesting kind of learning being on this side of the table. It's like, well, hold on a second. Like, you are brand X. You have like a 45 share in this category, like, show up, or we also have small brands that are, trying to get into that retail distribution, but they have a crazy following, right? So we're like, know who you are and use that, because retailers are looking for brands. Retailers are looking for innovation, right? So if you can find that perfect marriage between what the retailer is looking for and what the brands can offer, then that attribution fee, yeah, we get it, but I'm also going to get that incremental placement in the store. Or I might
Great.
get another ad over here, in the next quarter. So it's that two-way dialogue that is important, and understanding again what you're dealing with and what your full investment is.
Great. Thanks. Tracy?
Yeah, so you talked about commitment, and what I think I heard you say is, don't put all your chips in the pot,
Yeah.
but test and learn. So talk to us maybe about, in a lot of our audiences, small emerging brands. So what kind of level of commitment should let's talk about small emerging brands,
Yeah.
should think about? I mean, what are these things? I mean, I know it varies by brand, but
Yeah.
what's an average spend
I
at
mean,
for example?
sure. I think the way that I would answer that is like, what is the objective of that brand,
Mhm.
right? Is it a brand new brand? Are you looking to generate awareness? Are you looking, you relatively established and you're looking to steal share, right? Because we could say 30% of your sale, your media should be 30% of your sales if you're trying to do X, 50% if you're trying to steal share higher. So we can debate the percentages, and at MPG we kind of have like, here's what we think is best practice based on your marketing objective. But I think the more important thing in terms of investment for smaller brands that might not have these, huge budgets and deep pockets, is to strategically approach the retailer that you think you can win with. Right? It kind of goes back to that like go-to-market strategy. So if you have a product that is over indexes with a shopper at Target, right? Then maybe Target's the place that you should focus. And if you have $100,000, don't peanut butter that 100K across 3 different RMNs, but go all in with Roundel, right? Pick a retailer. I picked that one, right? But you know what I mean? And I think it's just investing with one, seeing how it goes, press pause after a while and see if it worked. Like, how did that campaign perform? If you were really going after return on ad spend and that was the KPI that you determined was important, then measure that, right? If you were trying to get new consumers into your brand, there's the way to measure that, right? New to brand consumers, right? So you can pick the KPI that's important, but it should all be grounded in that objective. And again, in terms of the amount of spend, that's kind of the variable, right? But I think the more important thing is to pick one, learn, reinvest, tweak, and learn and go again.
That makes sense. One question that you talked about, and I'm going to pivot here a little bit. So you said, all the big boys retailers have this new, RMN platform.
Mm-hmm.
You see it then funneling it down to other grocery retailers, let's call it like a Meijer or a Wegmans or a Publix. Do you see that trend continuing, or do those retailers have one as well?
Yeah, the groceries retailers definitely have one. And I do see that trend continuing. Especially grocery, because even before RMN was on their radar, they had loyalty data.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I live in upstate New York. I have a Wegmans card, right? Like they know what I'm buying, when I'm buying, how often I'm buying it. And now they can use that data when I'm in the store. Right. So I think that's the advantage of like those omni channels, like whether it's grocery or a big box, mass, home improvement, anything, anywhere where they have an app or like a digital platform where now they have my name, my credit card is plugged in there, right? And now I'm shopping, I'm on the website, and they have that data and they're able to get the data from my in-store behavior and my digital behavior. Right. So I think that's where the richness comes in. Everybody talks about 1P data or first party data, and that's what those retailers have. As you mentioned, Tracy, especially grocery, because they've been playing at this loyalty game a long time.
Right.
And that's the value that those types of retailers can offer brands, right? Because they have the insights, they have the data, they have the analytics, and that's where like the partnership can flourish, right? If the brand knows what they're trying to do and they're super clear on their objective and the retailer is willing to lean in, like, I think honestly, like that's where the magic happens.
Right. So what I think you're saying, Bruce, one more thing is all these retailers that have all this 1P consumer data, now they've learned a way to monetize it. In a nutshell, would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Larissa, your comments here are very interesting, and some of it gets back and reinforces the counsel Tracy and I give to the small emerging challenger brand audience as they think about going to brick and mortar retail or expanding is, a couple of hundred stores at a big retailer that you can handle, especially if it's in the right market, if you're regional, and work it out, work out any kinks, test and learn. If you're not really sure you know how to dance, don't go on TV. Figure it out in a small studio. There's a horrible analogy, but with these platforms that we're discussing here this morning, do you believe that if the objective is clear and managed correctly, are they equally effective for these smaller brands, or is this really a big brand game right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's easy for the big brands, right? Big budgets, deep pockets, huge negotiating power. For some of them, they're coming to the table with a big strategic company behind them with multiple other brands that have influence on that store, right? So there's a whole bigger dynamic. They can buy premium ads, they can buy premium placement, they can negotiate better rates. Because of that scale, larger brands have some advantages. But I do think that they can be equally effective for the smaller brands, right? And you said it, strategic, objective focused, like almost maniacally focused on what it is they're trying to accomplish, and partnering with those retails and those RMNs to accomplish that. Do not write a check. That's what we tell our clients. Don't just write a check and be like, oh yeah, like I got in with retailer X, here you go for the next 6 months, like let it go. Don't do that. You need to be on top of those campaigns. Did it perform? Like I said before, pause, readjust. Maybe the strategy is wrong. And I think honestly, that's one of the biggest advantages that these smaller brands, emerging brands have, right? They're nimble. They can change. They're agile in their approach. You get these big brands and you got to go up the food chain to get incremental funding or change the strategy, or what seems like a seemingly easy decision. It's not the decision of one person, right? Like that's got to go up the food chain, down the food chain. And by the time you've made a decision to change the strategy, the opportunity is gone. These smaller brands because they're small, they're nimble, they have that agility, they're able to make strategy decisions, campaign changes, and optimize as they go. So I think that is a huge advantage for them. So they can be equally effective, just in different ways.
Great. Tracy?
So I know you kind of talked about how brands should evaluate these programs. So anything else to add there? I think what I heard you say is really of the evaluation of the program is driven by the strategy and what your objectives and outcomes are. Anything to add there, Larissa?
I don't think so. I think, that's just it, being focused on the objective. But before they enter into any retail media spend, I think one thing, and we didn't talk about it yet, but just the importance of getting the fundamentals right? Don't spend $1 on any RMN, no matter how strategically aligned it is with the brand or your objective, if your PDP content isn't correct, right? If your content's not optimized, if you don't have the right images in the carousel, if you're not optimizing those bullet points in your titles for the keywords, don't spend anything, right? Like that has to be job number one, right? Because those dollars will not convert into sales, right? So I think there's some fundamentals that have to be in place. But once those fundamentals are in place online, once everyone's aligned to the strategy, and spend and see what happens and, optimize from there. But I think we kind of covered it, but that's why I would frame it up.
Yeah. So one of the things here, Larissa, that I think is ringing true is we've had a few brands that we work with that are getting kind of, how do I say this, encouraged to commit to an RMN as part of their new distribution agreement.
Oh,
I think it's clear based upon what we're hearing from you that these brands, they shouldn't just view it as a greens fee, necessary evil. You know, if you have to write the check to get in, everything you're saying just makes so much sense. You know, make sure your content is correct. You may agree, but you know, you may delay launching it until you're all buttoned up. You know, what are your KPIs? Is your carousel correct? And you know, we've had a few things where the bigger retailer will be like, well, we'll get to that. No, 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 no.
no.
We're gonna get to it now.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, brands need to understand that they have that power, that it's a negotiation, right? Like the retailer wants something too. That RMN, like they have a sales number to hit too, right?
Yeah.
Like they're selling ads, right? So it's in their best interest to get what the brands want, right? It's in their best interest to make sure that they're delivering and that they're partnering because it's the long game, right? It's not this quarter, it's not next quarter. Like we're seeing the trends in this revenue space is huge. It's huge. So it matters.
So as these small brands are considering launching, if an RMN is not mandatory, do you still think that's a good tactic for a smaller brand just launching, or is that something they should try to ease into after getting some of the other basics correct? Like I'm making this up. You have a TPR schedule quarterly, you have a seasonal ad, you're in their loyalty shopper program, or do you think this is something like, guys, how many more times do I have to say it? This is really here. Be organized and go.
I would say the latter. It's really here, be organized and go. But know who your target audience is, right? If you're going after a demographic that's shopping primarily the shelf and is not engaging in the app, is not engaging online, most people are, right? But maybe your first dollar should go to that TPR. I don't know, right? Again, it depends on the objective of the brand, depends on who your target is, what you know about that shopper, right? So I wouldn't say a blanket statement like do this. However, the trend is not going away, right? So it might not be the first dollar, maybe it's the second or third, right? But I don't think brands, no matter how big or small, in today's day and age in the US marketplace, can get away in the long run without investing in the retail media network space.
So is there a kind of waterfall of tactics you think smaller brands should use? Example might be, let's just stay with Walmart Connect. Is the first thing they should do, aside from make sure their product detail page looks good and is accurate and has the right keywords, is it really like keyword search? That should be the first thing you do?
The first dollar goes to search. The second dollar probably goes to search. The third dollar probably goes to search, right? We would maximize the search spend, right? Sometimes you hear it called pay-per-click, right? Like people are clicking on. And why is that? If you go back to the beginning of when we started talking about this, retail media networks, right? People are in this platform because they're in the mode of buying something. They're there to shop, right? We didn't talk about coming into the platform from somewhere else, but let's just talk about you're on Walmart.com. You're there because you're in the shopping mindset, right? So if I'm looking for a particular category and I'm searching something, I want my brand to show up. And if I'm putting dollars against search type of media, then there's a higher likelihood that I will get that shopper and they will convert, right? Make that purchase. So yes, in terms of tactics, 100% search first, right?
Yes.
And then there's other
And to your point, I'm sorry, Larissa, to your point, they've already crossed that first bridge, the consumer. They're in the shopping mindset or they wouldn't be there.
Exactly.
All right. So we're heading into the home stretch here. So one of our favorite personal interest questions is, who's had the biggest influence on your career as you reflect? You know, a parent, a first manager, a client that like was really tough, but in hindsight, you're like, damn, I'm lucky that she was my first client.
That's a good question. Very different than what we were just talking about.
Well, we like to keep you on your toes.
Yes, it's a twist off the high dive. You know, it would be, I'd have to say it would be a manager that I had early on in my career. So I was working at that time at Sharing Plow, and then Merck kind of changed over. And I had a manager who was like in charge of our BU. And he was a super, super smart guy. Like so smart where when I went in to like present to him, you had to be very, very buttoned up. And what I learned from him is really know your business. Like understand all elements of not just like the marketing mix, but like the P&L, right? Like what are you making money on? Like what are you selling? What is your profit? And he taught me how executives think about business, right? And that was an invaluable lesson. He also taught me how to be prepared, right? I mean, I remember sweating the Excel spreadsheet, printing it out, highlighting things, like going in there, like I had to know my stuff, and that stuck with me, right? So from professional perspective, he taught me kind of like some of those fundamentals that up until that point, like you kind of like coast by, but until you have somebody that like shows you and teaches you and demonstrates it really by example, like I think I would have missed that part. But he also cared about me as a person. You know, I was a mom with young kids, commuting a long way to work and a long way home. And things happen sometimes when you're a parent with young children and you have a career. And he also understood that part, you know, so he saw me for the person that I was, the mom that I was, the wife that I was, and treated me as a human being as well. So like I learned so much from him, and I keep in touch with him to this day. And it was just like one of those people that had he not been in my path at that time, I'm not sure I would have stayed for the long haul, right? But it kind of showed me like this is the type of leader I want to be. So
I love
Well,
that.
that's great.
Absolutely. So Larissa, how can tell us how we can get a hold of you?
sure. So I am at Market Performance Group. You can email me. Maybe we can share it later on, but my email is larissa.dannenberg@mpgllc.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. And I'm just happy to talk to anybody about any of these topics in the industry, right? Like just to kind of bounce ideas off each other and see what other people are struggling with in this space. You know, I think the more we talk about it, and no question is a dumb question, right? It's like I ask my colleagues all the time, like, hey, what do you think about this? And we're always collaborating and sharing information. So I invite anybody that's listening and watching, you know, to feel comfortable enough to pick up the phone and have that conversation with us.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for that. I know our audience appreciates that. So Bruce?
So before I cite our sponsor, I just want to give Larissa's firm a plug. I mean, Market Performance Group is top shelf. They have a very diverse skill set. So if you're a small emerging brand and she's willing to talk to you and answer questions, it would not be the worst half hour you ever spent in your life. You'd learn a lot speaking to her or her colleagues.
Hey everybody, let me tell you about our sponsor, Media Manager Marketplace. You've heard us say many times on this program that getting on the shelf isn't victory. It's getting the product off the shelves, out the door, and into the consumer's shopping cart that's going to make your product take root and grow. Best way to accomplish that is with advertising and marketing, and that's why we're so happy to have Media Manager Marketplace as one of the cornerstone sponsors of the Road to Retail. Media Manager Marketplace specializes in helping brands maximize the reach and impact of their advertising dollars by making sure that your precious marketing budget is spent on the right media mix to match your brand's demographics. And if you think it's going to cost you millions of dollars to create a national TV or radio marketing campaign, then you need to think again. Media Manager Marketplace can get your campaign started for far less than you might imagine. Their expertise in using the right blend of advertising to help drive demand for your product could be the difference between a 90-day trial and a nationwide rollout of your brand. Buck Robinson, president of Media Manager Marketplace and an industry veteran of 30 years, will personally review your product and offer his free assessment. Email him directly at buck@themediamg.com themediamgr.com. That's Buck, like a dollar bill, and he will stretch that baby for you at themediamgr.com.
Again, we encourage you to subscribe to our iTunes or Spotify channel at Road, the number 2, Retail.